Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Women in Wealth seminar series. I am so grateful that you're joining us today, and we have extraordinary women with us today. I'm going to start by introducing our keynote and moderator today. Christine Ramirez is the Managing Partner and Senior Vice President of Dale Carnegie. She was voted one of South Florida's most empowering women, and we are so blessed to have her here today. She will be moderating this series today and kind of having fun with our panelists as we talk about your network is your net worth. And vice versa, your network is your net worth. So also we're going to start with, I'm going to welcome Dr. Barbara Sharif. Dr. Barbara Sharif is our commissioner in District 8 of Broward County, but she's also the founder and CEO of an amazing company that started back in 2001, South Florida Pediatrics Housing, and she will explain a little bit about her company. I also like to welcome Sissy DeMaria. Sissy DeMaria is the founder and CEO of Cultivate PR. Sissy is a powerhouse in South Florida, in New York, and around the world. She will explain a little bit more also about her business, but also every single one of these ladies will talk about their philanthropy as well. Patricia Will is joining us. Patricia Will is the CEO and founder of Belmont Senior Living, an amazing project that's going to be inaugurating here in South Florida, but she will also talk about that as well. We have Joan Jimenez, my Joan of Arc, as I call her. Joan is the publisher of Coco Plum Living, but is also one of the top realtors at One Sotheby's in Coral Gables and located in Coco Plum. And last, but definitely not least, our rock star, the founder and CEO of Women Who Rock, Emily Zuby. I am so grateful you're here, Emily. And Emily will talk a little bit also about her organization, her foundation, and everything that she does with women in the community. Having said that, Christine, it's all yours. Good luck. Let's do this.
Well, thank you so much, Christine, and thank you for all that you have done to create this space for us to connect and to hear from these absolutely outstanding women that you've just introduced. We're so glad that all of you are here, to the panelists and also to our participants. Listen, it is busy right now. We are all dealing with literal online meeting fatigue. There are a million different things you could be doing right now, but you chose to be here. And because of that, I think I can fairly speak for the other panelists, because I see their heads nodding in the Zoom, that we are honored that you're here to have. Our hope is that this hour will be a time when we can kind of take a collective breath and leave here feeling refocused and energized around living this life that we want to live. And also, when Christine reached out to me about this panel, what got me really excited, besides the incredible women that I'm sharing the screen with right now, is in addition to that, Christine wanted to make this not just another panel, and meaning we're going to try to keep this very intimate and conversational versus like a formal, weird panel. And we're also going to infuse some timeless principles and tools and techniques from Dale Carnegie's content, so that when we leave here, we can be inspired by these women and their stories, and also be more equipped with tools to get through replicating maybe our version of success inspired by them. So we hope that this will be that type of experience for you. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started here. So ladies, I'm hoping we can start by each sharing a little bit about a defining moment in our life. And Joan, maybe we could start with you, because I see you right over next to me on the screen. We can like Brady Bunch around. And for the panelists, if you want to be next, just come off mute, and then I'll know that you want to say something. So the rest of you, maybe you can mute for the moment, and then we'll kind of bounce around from there. So Joan, thank you so much for being here. Share with us.
Thank you. Well, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm blessed to be here. Defining moment, I have to start with my early childhood and my background. And I was very blessed because I had a mother who was one of St. Mother Teresa's lay missionaries of charity. So she worked for decades volunteering in the Newark Soup Kitchen. For those of you that are from New York and New Jersey, you know where Newark is. And she gave to the poorest of the poor. And I grew up with that mindset of giving. So it was very natural for me to move into nursing. I was a clinical nurse specialist in a neonatal intensive care unit. So same concept of giving. And so it was how my life prepared my present life with this mindset of giving. And then I transitioned to real estate. As Christine mentioned, I'm a luxury real estate agent with One Sotheby's. And it sounds like it might be a strange transition to go from nursing to real estate, but actually they're very similar. First of all, the qualities that I bring to that giving quality, putting other people first, but that mindset of, being very, a lot of attention to detail, and your home is very important. It's a very emotional thing, just like your health is. And so that's kind of my personal story of how I went from, my mother growing up with that household to nursing to real estate. And then I can also share at some point how that influences the importance of networking and how I do it.
We look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you so much, Joan. And Sissy, how about you? What's been a defining moment?
Oh, I'd have to say I have to separate it into two, right? So my personal life would come first. Being a mother of 3 daughters was the greatest achievement I could ever have. And the fact that they're all happy and healthy, you can't ask for more. So that would be number one. The number two was as a young mother, I sort of had to enter the workforce really quickly, and was very scared to do it overnight. I mean, terrified. And I did it. I remember my boss said, well, you need to start the day after Christmas. And I was like, what do you mean the day after Christmas? Nobody works it, let alone me. I haven't worked, but I did it. And as scared and paranoid as I was, it launched an entire career for me. And it was a defining moment but I know what it's like to be so fearful to start a new job and to embark on a career and just go with it and make the best of a situation. And when life hands you a lemon, you make lemonade. And at that time in my life, that's exactly what I did. So
really appreciate you being courageous in my mind to share the word fear on a call with like literal strangers, right? Listening, we can't even see the participants, so they're really strangers. But I think a lot of us have come close to those fear feelings in this past year of the uncertainty for our families, for our businesses, for our own health. And to hear how you've gone through that fear emotion and launched into something spectacular is very encouraging. Emily, I see you off mute.
I am? Okay. Well, I was going to share, or do you want me to go after?
Yeah, share us.
Okay. Defining moment is when I started Miami Women Who Rock. The year is 2007. I have had an amazing career that spanned launching MTV, Wall Street, and launching an airline. The network that I built took me all the way from Argentina to London, and loving things. However, I am served with divorce papers. And I'm on my way to Italy to do a real estate hedge fund in Tuscany. When I get the papers, I don't cancel my trip. I go there and I suffer a mild stroke from all the stress. I'm in my late 40s. And when I get back to Miami, obviously that hedge fund is not going to be an option. And I had to pivot and change. And I'm sitting with a group of amazing women like I see here on the screen and talking about the situation. And one day you're on top of the world and flying a private jet, and next day you feel like the boulder has fallen on you, and out of the rubble emerges a new woman, a woman who is stronger, a woman who is confident, a woman who rocks. And that was the birth of how we started Miami Women Who Rock. As I looked around the women, and we have really evolved around the years. I will tell you that in the early days, no one wanted what I had. My life was a mess. But we turned that mess into a message, and we have really evolved over the years. And I can say that all the women, 2014, we really shifted and we started a charity event-driven purpose. And it's a network of women in business that believe in giving back. And that core value really tied our network. And, when we talk about our network is our net worth, I would say ours is priceless. I see Joan on this. She's one of our Founder Circle members. And just in 2017, we started a Founder Circle. And to show where we've gone and pivot through the years is that Founder Circle are the wind beneath my wings. These women are the ones that nominate our Rockstar Award honorees. They're the ones that vote on our honorees. They pick our charity partners. So we've been able to thrive even, now a year later, during this pandemic. So I'm just really happy to be here with all of you.
We're so glad that you're here, Emily. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think we all look at social media and we think everyone looks so fabulous in every way. They can't be messy, but if we don't get messy, we can't find, to use your words, our message. So let's be willing to get a little bit messy and kind of get through this thing. So thank you so much. Patricia, I see you off mute. Be next, please.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad to hear other women talk as they talk about their defining moments about fear and vulnerability. So I'm going to go back to the period of the early stages of founding my business and also of coming very close to failure. My company, which builds and operates seniors housing communities across the country, started from a personal need. I was caring for my mother-in-law, who was part of my family since I'm 16 and dated her son, who had early stage dementia, raising young men and working full time. And as we watched her dementia progress, the cross between my professional acumen as a builder developer and my role as a caregiver kind of merged. And I decided that I wanted to make something in that space, having no experience whatsoever. I took everything I had to buy a piece of land, thinking that I was going to make a building, and very quickly ran out of money. And as I looked around, I knew it was critical to be able to fund more than I could fund, and realized that people that I knew, which really speaks to the network, may be able to help me. My defining moment came in a very strange way. I was introduced by people to a guy, and I was trying to raise, it sounds funny today, but $600,000 was my lifeline. While I was in his office, I got a call from my assistant, excused myself because she said it was urgent. And she told me that she was buying used office furniture for us and my credit card was maxed out, what to do. And I went into the ladies' room and I cried my heart out and went back in and looked a mess and had a lot of resolve. And at the end of the meeting, miraculously, I got the money. And I think that, in retrospect today, as I grow a portfolio of buildings in South Florida and we have a business coast to coast, I think back to the importance of connectivity with people who believed in me that against all odds would help me launch in a space that I really knew nothing about. And for me, that was a defining moment.
Thank you for sharing that, Patricia. And we're going to, throughout our conversation together today, we're going to be digging even more into hearing more about these stories. But you're so right, Patricia, right off the bat, ladies, the vulnerability, the candid conversation here is exactly what we were hoping to create when we brought this space together. And as you said, Patricia, it's all about connection and community. And it's been hard for a lot of people to keep that community sense throughout our social distancing in the past year. We're joking before the call about how all of us have longer hair than last year, and we look a little different, right? But time has passed and we've had to work to intentionally make those kind of connections. Barbara, how about you? We'd love to hear a defining moment here to kick off our conversation with you.
Sure. I think that my defining moment came as a mother, having my second child and being in the administrative workforce, corporate America. I was a location director for a Fortune 500 company that had national locations all over. And my job required that I travel frequently for training purposes and for helping to set up other locations. And I just remembered I had my second child. She was in the intensive care unit. I hadn't quite gotten on my feet yet, but she was going to be there for a while. And my job required that I travel. And I was running through the airport and I had a Medela pumping style on my shoulder.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had my rolling briefcase with the overnight clothes, and I was going through the check-in. I was going through security, and I just remember just being so flustered, thinking I'm going to miss out on something important. I'm going to miss out on something special in my child's life again. And I already had one child who was already 3 years old. And I was just having one of those ambivalent moments as a mother saying, okay, I want this career, but I also want to be a mom too. And I found myself just at a crossroads, and that feeling kind of propelled me to say, okay, now I'm going to do this for myself. So I ended up, as a result of not wanting to travel for somebody else, I said to myself, can I do this myself, and can I make this money at home and stay closer to my kids and then have the best of both worlds? And so out of that came South Florida Pediatric Home Care. And now I'm proud to say, yes, I've been home. I've been an involved parent, part of the PTA. I've been there every step of the way for my kids like I wanted to, but I also was able to achieve my goals and dreams of being an entrepreneur. And at this point, employing over 200 nursing professionals in 2 different counties. And so that has afforded me the opportunity to do a lot of other things that I want to do in my life. And so that would be my defining moment for today.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And for sharing that example of taking command of your life. Like literally, can you not picture? I feel like we're all right next to you, running in our, hopefully maybe stilettos or sneakers with our suitcases next to you at the airport, but feeling, we've all felt a version of that weight. And yet many of us, it's hard to do what you did and say, I'm taking command of my life and I'm going to do this in a way that's meaningful for me. As we go through these panelists' comments, one of the things we wanted to do today was infuse some how do you do this later stuff, some tools, some techniques to kind of demystify what we're talking about. And so one thing I'm going to throw down a challenge as we're listening to our panelists. In our leadership training, we teach a technique called the interview. So if you're an HR professional, this is not for interviewing, and that is not something I said incorrectly. It's called the interview. And essentially the idea behind the interview is that if we're trying to connect with someone, there's really 3 kinds of questions we can ask them. So the first category or type of questions are factual questions. So those are like where are you from? Where do you live? If you've been to some of my training, we do that visual with the globe and the name tag and the house, trying to help us remember. We can ask these kind of like factual, where'd you go to school? Where have you lived? Type of questions. The second type of questions are a little deeper. They're causative questions. You may hear some of those today. How did you decide to do this? What made you inspired to do that? How did you choose to prioritize what was important to you? Causative questions are going to teach us, if we're listening to the way people answer them, how they think. And as leaders and as women on this earth, or anyone on this earth, we've got to constantly be listening to understand what's going on with people and how they think. And then finally, though, the deepest level of question we can ask is something that would be inside of a values-based question. And I think that a values-based question, when we're asking them, might look something like, tell me about a turning point in your life. Or like we just heard from these amazing panelists, what was a defining moment for you? And hopefully, as you were listening to those answers that they shared, you heard some values from them. And if you did, in the chat, you could share what was a value you heard. Did you hear leaving a legacy? Did you hear family? Did you hear faith? Did you hear friendship, community? These are the values that drive the behavior of these women. And so it's a real treat to, in an hour, get to hear from 6 of them these type of intimate values-based question, causative-based question kind of questions, so that we can really truly know them and what they're all about in a genuine way. But this is something you can replicate with people as well, by not just asking the factual stuff, but also going deeper into the causative and values-based questions. So let's keep replicating this. I know, Joan, you're really passionate about listening to people and how important that's been throughout your life. Would you like to share a little bit more with us about?
Oh, I would love to, and you're so right. So in nursing, we call that active listening, and it's one of the most important skills in nursing. It makes one of the better nurses, as well as in life, your interpersonal skills, how you communicate with people. And a lot of people get caught up in the me, and people like to talk about themselves. Okay, how many times have you been somewhere and you walk up and meet someone and they just want to talk about themselves, right? And it's a very, very good business practice. It's good for relationships in your whole life, but you want to get to know, just like with the tools you're sharing, Christine, what kind of questions to ask. You know, who is this person? You know, how can you connect in a genuine, authentic way? You know, and it has to be genuine. And to take a step back from that, you have to approach life with a very caring attitude. You know, you don't want to be looking at them like a dollar sign. This is a person. You know, you want to value them, you want to respect them, you truly want to get to know them. And I think that's one of the most important things in life, and to listen carefully. And the other thing is nonverbal. It's not just the answers. What did they not say? Or what are their nonverbal cues telling you, right? Maybe they're saying something, but you can tell they're a little bit uncomfortable about talking about something. You know, you're not going to push them, right? It's very important. It's very important in life to understand people and the way they communicate and who they are through proper communication, and taking the focus off yourself and putting it on them. And if I can add one more thing about that. If you think about those charismatic people, especially in politics over the years, one of the things I would hear most often is they made you feel like you were the only one in a room, right? And that's kind of how we need to approach our relationships and our networking. People want to feel valued, and don't be distracted. You know that person that's standing there, but they're looking away from you. They're supposed to be
the Hollywood handshake, Joan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, right, exactly. Okay, who else really do I want to talk to in this room, right?
Yeah. I think the 2021 version of that is when we've got 2 screens and the camera is on this screen, but our notes and our chat are on this screen. So we're going like this while we're talking. And then we wonder why they don't trust us.
That's exactly.
We've got to evolve our face-to-face networking, like avoiding what you just said, the Hollywood handshake, to how does that look in 2021 with our virtual presence? Are we looking at our thumbnail the whole time? Are we looking eye contact right into the camera to build trust with someone? Not natural. It's also not natural to stare at yourself all day. NPR just had a special on that, and they were talking about how the biggest negative impact of the pandemic might be the psychological negative influence of evaluating ourselves for 8 to 10 hours a day on Zoom. And I thought, man, that's kind of crazy, but true. So, but yeah, own your presence, look in the camera, don't look over here. Just some tips, right, for building that kind of trust that Joan is talking about. Barbara, you also shared with us on our earlier call about how family played a big role in kind of setting you on your path. Can you share with us a little bit more about those values that were instilled in you?
So from the time that I was little, my father and my mother put a lot of emphasis on giving back, so much so that my father started a food drive, and I spent a lot of my Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays there giving out food to those who were needy. And his philosophy on that was that if you helped someone, if you fed someone, you were blessed tenfold. And it was based on the Islamic religion, but also it was just what he believed so passionately and what he did. And he always gave back. And so as a doctor of nursing practice, 28 years in the healthcare profession, you know, I was trying to figure out a way, how do I give back to people? And I stumbled into politics, because politics allowed me an opportunity to give something back on my own time in my own way. I am so busy, I can't run a food drive like he did. But if I advocate for people and I can make positive changes and I can contribute something back to people, then I think that I'm doing my part to make this a better place. And so that's where I received the strongest influence for giving back, is my parents and my upbringing.
It's great hearing you talk, because I think so often we hear from leaders, especially maybe not just younger leaders, but really all of us, but maybe we'll focus on the younger ones. They look up to us and they say, I need to be just like that, or I need to do it exactly that same way they did. But here you are sharing how you were inspired by your father in this example's case, but you did it in your own way. You made it work for you, which is something, Emily, I've heard you say that before, right? We've got to, how do I make this work for me? Does that resonate with you at all? Like, to share kind of more about where that slogan came from for you? That's how do I make this work for me?
I think, you know, what I say now is that it's not a me, it's a we. And part of that is really, I have had the ability to really align and connect, and the values, the ideas of joining with women and meeting them there, what's important to them. And, you know, I think sometimes, you know, you can get so successful in life and have a very narrow perspective, at least for me. So that shift that I made with Miami Women Who Rock, and really making it about the women that we were honoring and the women that were choosing the honorees, was really like a shift, and that idea of giving back and service. I mean, I will tell you, the legacy to build of giving back to our community and building it with the women who feel the same way, have the same core values, and really treasure philanthropy as a core value of an organization. That's what we're about. And that's what makes it rock. That's what enables me to get up at 5 a.m. and, you know, get to work.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're in great company on this call with both our participants and also our panelists, of being very invested in the community and in charity, and seeing how if we fix the crown of everybody else, ours shines a little brighter too, like the kids are saying, right? It's awesome. I love it. Sissy, you are someone who shared with us that charity has always played a big role in your life, and it even helped you land your biggest client. We would love to hear that story. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, you know, I think at networking, there's sort of 3 different networks. There's the first one is the one you do because it's part of your work. So for example, if you're in real estate, you attend real estate seminars. Then the other network is the one you don't even really think about, or when you go to your church or your synagogue or your children's school and you're involved in it. You don't even think about it, but you're networking. The third network is your passion network. And I've always been passionate about horses my entire life. And when I approached a certain age, I started thinking, oh, this business had rocked my soul, working so hard in the PR business with clients in the what have you done for me lately sort of capacity. It's a very hard watermark to reach all the time. So I started a charity called Give Back for Special Equestrians, which enables disabled children and veterans to participate in horseback therapy because it's extremely beneficial for them. Eye-hand coordination, strengthening their balance. It gives them confidence. You know, if you're confined to a wheelchair and for the very first time you're placed on a horse, you're actually walking. So it's really powerful. Well, because of my involvement with this passion charity of mine, I did an event for Rolls-Royce, and they very much liked the people that I brought to the event and the way I executed the event. So the next thing you know, they asked me to do another event for them, And I thought, gosh, I'd be thrilled. This is wonderful. Before you know it, it was one right after another. And they quickly became the biggest client my firm ever had. So it really was transformative. I was not seeking it, but it came to me as a result of giving back. And I think what a lot of people here have said is authentic. I've heard that word a lot today. When you are authentic about something, it shows. And it's not that sale. It's not going into a networking event and flagging who you want to go after. No, it's connecting with people with like-minded, with passion, and that just sets the world on fire.
Yeah, it really does, right? And it reminds me too, Joan, like you said to us on the other call, that the way you do, I think, is it one thing is the way you do everything. Oh, did we lose Joan? I think we did. Well, Joan always says the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And Sissy, if you had done your business one way and say it hadn't been the level of excellence that you did, you wouldn't have had that opportunity, right? So the way we show up in the world, we got to live an intentional life and kind of make decisions about what that's going to look like and what that means for us. It also reminds me too, Patricia, you've said that there's a difference between connections and contacts. Do you want to talk to us a little bit more about that topic? And then Barbara, I'll come to you because I know you're passionate about this as well, like kind of putting people in different, let's talk to you after Patricia.
Well, look, all of us have a myriad of connections, be they digital or analog, and they come at the PTA and in the carpool line and through family and through networking events. But at the end of the day, they're relatively superficial. And I think that a hallmark of what has made me who I am is to be honest and vulnerable and work on developing a connectedness to establish not a million, but some exceptional relationships where both of us can feel supported and engaged, significantly engaged in conflict and work it out, and be vulnerable and share. As an entrepreneur, I have found that to be critically important because entrepreneurship is somewhat lonely. As you build a company and as you're out there putting yourself on the line, you mainly have to cheerlead. You have to cheerlead your investors, you have to cheerlead your employees, you have to cheerlead everyone. I was fortunate enough to found a company where not only it's my passion, but also every day we do well by doing good. So we're contributing to people's lives in a very material way. And that's really what keeps me going. But at the end of the day, you still are, even today, I have over 4,000 employees, but I'm still kind of out there by myself. And having that connectedness with people who can be honest with me, who can tell me that I'm wrong, who say, rethink this, is critically important. And I think you have to build those relationships. There's a way to do that, but it can't all be, as you said, the Hollywood handshake. Most importantly, you have to learn to be yourself and put yourself out there. There's a wonderful saying that's quoted in a book that I love by Oscar Wilde that says, be yourself because everybody else is taken. And I that always comes back to me.
Before we go to you, Barbara, Patricia, you said so much in that last 90 seconds that we can all break down into maybe 5 more talks because there's so much there to debrief. But one thing that really stands out to me is it sounds so obvious and so easy to be ourselves, but man, that's hard. Like a lot of us have to figure out who that person is, and then how do we have the courage to share about ourselves to other people. But I can remember early on in my own career, you know, asking a lot of questions, being genuinely interested in people, getting them to be talking, which is awesome and really the way to do it. But then if I didn't share about myself back, I realized that I didn't have a true connection with them because they didn't know who I was. And even in the pandemic now, when we do virtual training, I've been coached by my mentor to put a slide up that has like 12 or 15 pictures of things I like to do. So of course I'm a card carrying 30 something millennial. I've got the avocado toast and the craft cocktails, and I'm a gardener. So I've got the plants and the beach. I'm an electric car driver. I like to early adopt things. And I feel shy every time I put myself out there. But what I found is it reduces barriers from people who might not think they can connect with me. And then I'm able to be out of the way so they can focus on growing. So just curious, like, does anyone have any advice on like how to be more yourself with people? Like, what have you done in the recent, maybe this past year specifically with the pandemic, to keep putting yourself out there in a thoughtful way?
So I'm sorry, are you asking me that question, Christine?
I'm asking everybody, but Barbara, if you've got something, we'd love to hear it. And I definitely want to hear more about your vibe on connections and how you think about different types of connections as well. So maybe do that while they're warming up their answers of how they've been able to put themselves out there.
Okay, so in terms of the first question, so I always think in my mind, people have value. Everybody has value, right? So we have different types of people that come into our lives, but yes, everybody has value. But I also think of it in terms of not just value, but placement, because based on my identification of what people add or take away from my life. So I think as women, as individuals, we tend to not identify quickly where our support is. So for me, my first group of valuable people come in the form of my support system. Those are the people that are the ones that are in my life. I can depend on them in my time of need or in my time of rising, and whether that be on a professional or personal level, or in my instance, political, okay? And political is very different than the other two, by the way. But they can be family or they can be long-term proven friends. And this is the group that I call the Who's For You group. So these are the people like my mom, who, when I decided to take that step out and that leap on faith and start my business, and everybody else was saying, you are crazy. You're leaving a 6-figure job and you are doing what? And you are giving your, putting all your finances, all of your retirement into what? And that was into me. And my mom said something to me when I was getting discouraged about it. She said, if Barbara, if I had to bet on anybody and to succeed at something, I would bet on you, because I know you're going to do it. And it was just one of those moments in time where it gave me more value for myself. And so I place a lot of value on that. And then, when you're talking about friends, we as women, we tend to use the word friends very, very loosely.
You mean not just Facebook friends, Barbara?
Those are your acquaintances.
Yes.
But I think that there's people that you may be acquainted with that sometimes it's hard to say, but they come into your life for maybe what they can gain, but they also might be able to give you something. So you might be able to gain something from them. So I put a value on those people, because they may not be your best friends, but they may be people that do expand your network. And when we're talking about expansion of the network, it might be that they introduce you to my next bucket or my next group of people, which is those who are acquaintances. And they may be people that may be around you in a professional capacity, maybe in a chamber of commerce, maybe in a business relationship. And those people can help you through some of the darkest moments in your life without ever knowing that they're doing it, because they're experiencing the exact same thing you're experiencing.
Okay.
And these are entrepreneurs, business owners, people that just simply are maybe coworkers. But I think that they can relate to your trials and tribulation, and they have value, because these are not the people that you are going to share every bit of your life with, but they're people that you may say, hey, you know what, my company is getting hit really hard from COVID, and I'm experiencing a downturn in my revenue. And they say, oh my God, I'm so glad that you said that, because I am too. And that gives you that sense of relief that, hey, I'm not the only one experiencing this. Right. Now, you're not going to stand there and pour out your life story to them, because they probably don't want to hear it either. But just the fact that you have somebody that can relate to what you're going through.
And again, that goes back to we've got to be comfortable putting it out there, right? That doesn't mean we always have to put out the sob story, but put out the wins, put
Yeah.
out the good stuff, right? That's what's going to make connection. During the pandemic, I had one of those bluesy days. I don't know if I'm the only one with a bluesy day. And I called my better half, and he was like, girl, you get outside and you start gardening. That's what's going to make you happy. He's like, maybe you should take a glass of wine with you into the garden. So I went outside. It was like the end of the day. I was like, I'm going to take a picture of my wine in my garden. And I was trying to get a lift, and like 2 or 3 clients who I'm connected with on social media responded to me. They're like, oh, call me Monday. I've got something going on, and call me about this. And it just reminded me about that. And I thought, wow, like how blessed am I that like on my bad day, like something good's gonna happen. But you got to show up, right? If we don't show up, that can't happen. So
I
ladies,
just want to say that when Barbara mentioned that to me, I'm literally taking notes. I want you to know that you've repeated those circles, Barbara, when you first mentioned it. So I encourage everybody just to really sit down, because it's very enlightening when you start putting those people in those groups. Very enlightening.
Could do that. I mean, if you don't mind, Christine, can you put those circles in the chat so we can capture them? I think that would be really helpful for all of us, as a little homework. Where can we put people? So,
Christine, you asked the question of, how did we get out there or show up and make a presence this year?
Yep.
And, I had to think about it because, didn't know what questions you were planning to kind of spur the conversation. But, years ago, I attended a networking event with the United Way, and they had a woman speaker. She was a Hollywood producer, and she told the audience, every 10 years, ladies, you need to shake it up. You need to do something radical. You need to reinvent yourself. And I thought, my goodness, that's the last thing I'm ever going to do, shake things up. I'm stable, right? Well, that's exactly what we did this year during the pandemic. Instead of continuing with Krebs DiMaria, a company where my name was benefiting, right, in business relationships, I started a brand new company, Cultivate, because we are cultivating people, parties, and places. We're connecting with people, but also because I'm empowering the next generation. They can't succeed with my name solely on the door. They can't. It's hard to get around that barrier. But when you have a name that's, a blank name, they can ride the wave. And that's important because, succession planning is really key. You can't just think about yourself and think that your client's going to want you forever and you're going to be the star in your fiefdom forever, because you're not. So you have to plan ahead. So how did we do it? We rebranded, we did publicity, and we got out there during a time when, what else are you going to do during a pandemic? Shake it up, shake that tree.
Yeah, a lot of Netflix was going down, right? But not for you. You were making things happen.
No, shake the tree, just like she said.
I'd like to say a couple of things about what you do to put yourself out there during the pandemic. First of all, I wish I had known you better, Barbara, because we could have commiserated about revenues going down and caregiving. Because again, it's lonely and you get scared and all that. I think when we talk about networking and connectivity, particularly for those of us who are now leaders in our businesses, we don't really think enough about the important connectivity between us and our teammates. So one of the things, and this is going to sound strange because I'm over 60 and therefore technically vulnerable, but one of the things that I felt it was terribly important to do is not just sit behind Zoom. We run 31 communities across the country and in Mexico City, but to get very safely in there with my workforce and say, there is a way to do this such that you can be safe, but also demonstrate that you're not just talking the talk behind Zoom, but you're also walking the walk and relating to your customers, very often quarantined, and your workforce, where in my case, we've got a workforce that showed up every day and learned how to wear masks and sometimes gowns very strange in our environment, and to not be there, to be absent and behind Zoom felt to me like a violation. So there is a way to do that safely. And obviously we had states on lockdowns and quarantines if you went from one place to the other. But I think when we talk about networking, we can't forget our own and the cultures that we create by identifying with everyone that is around us, from the dishwasher to the executive who runs a building. And I feel that communicating is terrifically important, but given these limitations, there's also something called being there.
No, absolutely. Go ahead, Emily.
I love that. And, you know, Christine, I love your example about the Avo toast and the electric car. And I learned so much about you. And I think that that's really important. And, you know, when I think about this past year, we really rolled out our digital platform, and I had to get to a point personally to be comfortable with the technology. And I can honestly say, how did I put myself out there? I did a blog, a Comeback Queen, where I got real vulnerable about my setbacks, comebacks, my trials and my tribulations and my triumphs. But the other thing is, you know, I can honestly say that everything from Snapchat to TikTok, you know, Miami Women Who Rock is on it. And it opened up a door that I didn't expect. And this is really interesting because we are now working on an event, 40 Under 40, because I met really young, rising superstars that are all over technology, that are like, oh, Women Who Rock, I never heard of you guys. Who are you? What are you doing? And it just, you know, like Sissy said, it wasn't that I was going there to go there. It's what happened organically as a result of going there.
Absolutely. It's interesting, like the balance between what can happen when you're intentional and then what organically flows out of that type of intentional living, that take command living that we've been talking about throughout today's call, right? It could just flow out from there. I actually think this might be a good time to share some secrets of success. So I just put a link in the chat. I think it will work. The access looked a little bit weird when I just linked it, but I'm also going to share my screen just real quickly here. So Dale Carnegie, the founder of the company that I work with, he wrote a famous book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And in that book, he gives tools for a lot of different things, but 30 principles that we call the human relations or the EQ principles. Some are about leading others, some are about influencing others. But the first 9 are just about being a good human to your humans. And like Patricia said, we can't just network externally. We've got to take care of our own and network with our own community. So just as a group here, take a moment, our panelists, our participants, read over these 9 principles for just a moment. And for our panelists, as they start to kind of resonate with you, maybe you could kind of call out a number and we'll talk through these 9 principles here for a couple minutes. And then we'll get back to some more questions. Couple things to notice right away. First principle, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. It is literally the only principle in all 30 where Dale encourages us to stop doing something. The rest are all tools you can add to your tool belt to accomplish some of the types of community and relationships we've been talking about on this call. So panelists, any of these resonate with you? I know we talked about a few of them already today.
I guess number 2, give honest, sincere appreciation. I read something, I think maybe it was in The Art of War, that you should appreciate and praise equally to punish also as a leader. When someone does do something bad, you should correct it, but also on the other hand, always praise for good work, because sometimes it's easy to criticize and complain without praising and encouraging.
Absolutely, because you're right. And keep in mind for all of us, Principle number 1 is not saying don't coach, don't redirect, don't keep people on track. That would be a really bad parenting principle or a bad management principle. But it's just like, don't run around complaining, oh my gosh, another day in the pandemic, or like just complaining about everything that's happening. It's about bringing it forward. But when it comes to appreciation, I can't imagine that any of us on this panel haven't built our network without it. We probably give a lot of appreciation. So for those of us who are participating who might want a tool to help you show honest and sincere appreciation a little bit better, here's a tool you might want to jot down. It's actually an acronym, and the word is TAPE, T-A-P-E, and the T stands for things. Everybody likes when someone acknowledges their things. When we were just getting warmed up on this call, we were admiring Emily's background. Sissy, you're talking about how beautiful her blow dry looks of her hair. We're talking about how Barbara is officially ready to rock for St. Patty's Day with her green on, thanks to her daughter. So listen, we all like to hear that our things are nice, right? But accomplishments, that's what A stands for. Recognizing someone's accomplishments, I think we would all agree, it's just a little bit more meaningful than saying, hey, I like your car, or hey, I like your watch. Hey, congrats on doing that 5K, or meeting that fundraising goal, or reinventing yourself and starting a new business in your 40s, or whatever it might be, right? An accomplishment is that much better. But the single greatest way that we can show appreciation is what the P is. And the P stands for personal traits. Personal traits. So, imagine if we could really distill down to a personal trait. So I'll just give you a quick example of what this looks like in case you want to use it. But many years ago, like 6-7 years ago, I was coaching a female CEO for a company in Palm Beach County. And we had a meeting in one small conference room. We were prepping her to speak for about 1,000 people for the first time as the CEO of the company. And she was pretty nervous. We were running through it, pretty normal stuff. When we got a knock at the door, and one of her team members came in, he was dripping sweat. He had clearly had hustled to get to her. And he's like, you've got to get out. You got to get out. There's somebody here who I know you wanted to meet, who happens to be in the building right now. We weren't expecting it, but if you come with me right now, you'll get to meet him. So of course we whisk out to go meet this person. The interaction happens. The connection is made. She says, thank you, like any good human would do, to her team member. And we go sit back down to continue the coaching. And I said to her, would you like to make that even more meaningful? And she looked at me sideways, huh? I already said thank you. And I said, what personal trait did he demonstrate when he came and got you to make sure you didn't miss someone? And to my panelists, I'll throw it out there to you because we can engage easily here. What personal traits did you hear that he had? He takes the initiative.
He was persistent.
Takes the initiative. Listen, he's not going to have an opportunity every day on the job to make an introduction for her. But as a great team member, will he daily have an opportunity to take the initiative, to be persistent towards goals, to have clarity of the focus and the vision for the organization, not just his part of what he's doing, right? So that's an example of how, if we use personal traits, we can really reinforce the behaviors we want to see from people and encourage them as well. So the E stands for example. The feedback I get from most people is that they don't show appreciation because they don't want people to get a big head. Some of that is generational. Some of that is just kind of crazy. But legitimately, people are worried that if I give you too much appreciation, you're going to get too many good jobs. You're going to take your foot off the accelerator. So if you use an example, then it becomes specific and it becomes actionable and it's less airy-fairy, right? So things, accomplishments, personal traits, dig for that personal trait, grab that repeatable behavior, because don't you think if you acknowledge it, they'll want to do it more. And then back that stuff up with an example so that you don't look like a, hey, great job. And they're like, for what? I don't even know what I did this week, right? So anyways, maybe we'll talk about 1 or 2 more principles here. Anything stand out to our panelists?
I would say that especially with wearing mask, that number 5, a smile. What I really miss wearing a mask is you don't know my expression. and being able to, I'm a smiler. I think that a smile is like the biggest encouragement you can give someone and the biggest connection, eyes and a smile. So, that one jumped out at me. And I think, given the fact that I'm with this amazing group of women and on this panel, I've had a lot to smile about. So I'm extra joyous and happy.
Emily, I think if we turned off your camera, we could still hear your smile, because you can absolutely hear a smile. And I would encourage you to keep smiling, because we want to see your eyes lighting up and your eyebrows up right above the mask. So we want to see that. You can definitely hear it and see it. Thank you. How about one or two more principals here?
I would be happy to. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So I was saying that I think the one in terms of 9, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. I think a lot of times when we are in a work environment, especially when you are the boss, I think that people can, and Patricia, I think you can relate to this with the number of employees that you have, because when you have a lot of employees, sometimes people are more conservative with what they are saying and what they're doing, because they don't want to make you feel like they're being disrespectful with their suggestions. And I've always been one of those leaders and people that said, okay, tell me what you think, because a lot of times, like that old saying, 2 heads are better than one. So I always try to make anybody that's around me feel like their input is welcome, it's needed, and it's appreciated. And I think that makes the other person really feel important, and also grants a sense of accountability and a sense of ownership when they're talking about their departments or their jobs.
Yeah, Barbara, you're accomplishing a lot of those principles through that example. I mean, what a perfect example of how we can practically, gain a practical tool for making people feel important. Again, keyword sincerely. That number 9, we think of it like an outcome. So if you do any combination of 1 through 8, as we just heard from Barbara, become genuinely interested in other people, listen, encourage them to talk about what they see, talk in terms of what's important to them. The outcome is going to be, as you said, Barbara, that they feel important in a sincere way. So, Patricia, which one was standing out to you?
Number 4, become genuinely interested in other people. So when I began and was hiring the very first people 25 years ago at my very first building, many of whom are still there, I could get to know them. And I could, we hung pictures together. We put the dishes in the kitchen and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
The challenge of geography began to make me think that I wanted to retain those kinds of relationships around the country. So one of the things that I do is have at least one dinner every year with roughly 1,000 people in small groups. And through the years, what we found is that I've developed wonderful relationships with line employees who've now got children that have graduated college. I got a text the other day from my first employee in Nashville, who is a nurse, whose husband got prostate cancer. And I immediately put her husband in touch with my husband, who had prostate cancer. And these relationships with a lot of people have grown out of essentially really being interested in other people who've found their calling, in this case with my company, but who have wonderful stories today to tell, and with whom I've shared a lot of intimacy in ways that are not normally perhaps seen in vertical organizations. Know one another. And I think that is terrifically, terrifically important. The listening principle is critical, but being there in person and not in the workplace and just saying, well, what's your life like? Well, here's what's going on in mine, is, I think, terrific. But you have to be deliberate about it and care.
Yes. That's a key word, Patricia. And as the pandemic's been settling in, I've been hearing more and more from the leaders that we work with at Dale Carnegie, our clients, that they used to be able to just kind of walk down the hallway and see people, or it was a lot easier. There were less barriers to having these kind of chats, like the ones you described, of putting the dishes in the dishwasher, right? Now we've got to be intentional. We might even have to set up a Zoom link or put a card in the mail, or there's got to be a different way to do it. So, how do we get more deliberate about doing this? I mean, one thing is to say, these 9 principles are common sense, but let me pick one and do it with intention this week in order to make the people in my life really connect. And if you're leading other leaders, as the ladies on this panel are, we've got to embody that so that we can then get our teams to do it. I think of this graphic, I'll just show really quick and then we'll stop sharing my screen. A lot of us focus a lot on the black box. What are we trying to get done? What's the performance we're driving? What goals do we have in our life? But we don't first stop and think as leaders, how are we role modeling the way, holding ourselves accountable, focusing, as we've been hearing from our panelists, on others more than ourselves. And then of course, elevating our thinking to being more strategic. If we're still stuck in the tactical, just trying to keep our head above water vibe every day, it's very hard to think strategically. So, as leaders, I just throw out a challenge to us to be thinking, in what ways can we shift the focus just from the outcome we're trying to accomplish, but really role model the way, and then instill this in the leaders beyond us. And it's just like the gym, it takes maintenance, guys. Like, this is not easy stuff. It's common sense, but not commonly done. So, we've got to do that maintenance. One way that Christine and I were talking before this, one way that we maintain ourselves is by reading. I had a mentor share with me early on in my career that he would say this saying, he would say, readers are leaders. And I would kind of roll my 20-something eyes and be like, what are you talking about? That's so cheesy, but it's memorable. And I have found it to be true, whether I'm reading the Wall Street Journal or the Sun Sentinel or the South Florida Business Journal. I'm hearing about things that expand my worldview, make me more genuinely interested in people, and a little bit dangerous to connect with anyone when networking, because I know a little bit about a lot of things. So, ladies, I would like to ask you, what could you share with us a book and maybe why that book resonates with you? Because I think a lot of our participants might like to take on some new reading.
Well, I'll share it because I know you were going to ask us this, but my favorite book is A Big Life in Advertising. And why I love it is it was written by Mary Wells Lawrence, who was one of the first women who ever made it on Madison Avenue in television's golden age. And she was incredible. She was behind those campaigns like Avis, We Try Harder, Alka-Seltzer, Plop, Plop, Fizz, Fizz. So she was a woman in a man's world and she made it to the very top. And, she had a lot of personal struggles too, but for anybody in my industry or, in particular advertising, the PR, things have changed a lot in the world, but she was a real pioneer.
Thank you, Sissy. Who's next?
I'll go next. So a book that really resonates with me is Shoe Dog. And it's the Phil Knight story of Nike. And the reason why it, especially during the pandemic, really resonated with me is, one, it's about perseverance, without a doubt. But he really had me at the first question that he asked. And he said, how do I leave my mark on the world? And there's no doubt that we'll look at that swish and we know just do it. And it's a great reminder, but I was just fascinated with the way he built his network and the fact that, he talks a lot about how, he got partners that were not the usual suspects. And sometimes we tend to ignore the people that could be part of our network that, we think that way. So the book really opened up for me some of those windows of opportunities. And I just, it definitely as a brand and all the questions that he asked in the book, I found super inspirational and all about perseverance, which I think is one of my superpowers. So
I love that you're owning that superpower, and it kind of throws down a challenge to all of us to be like, I want a superpower. What's mine? And Barbara, it reminded me of what you were sharing too, that, Emily mentioned that we sometimes maybe, I don't want to change your words, Emily, but we have people who we don't consider to be part of our network for whatever reason. And as you reminded us, Barbara, maybe there's a spot in one of those circles for those humans so that we can still stay connected to them.
I agree. Yeah, there is. There's a spot for everybody. And that's why I chose Leadership by Valuing by Tony Griffiths. I read this book a while ago. I met him at a seminar 2014. And as he was talking about leaders and how they develop organizations, he put them in a group, and it was leading by value. And it reminded me of my life and the way that I organize my life. And I think that if you're going to lead, and if you're going to be in a position of influence and where little girls or other women or other entrepreneurs are going to look up to you, you have to show them how to just be themselves and lead in their own way. There is no textbook way of being a great leader and a great entrepreneur. I always joke around and say that the successful entrepreneurs just made less mistakes than the unsuccessful ones.
Where they were willing to try to make a few more mistakes. Right?
Nobody's perfect. And for some reason, success is always connected to that perfect image. People think that, okay, you have these great companies and oh my God, you never made a mistake. Well, I'm here to tell you, I just made a few less than probably some of the unsuccessful people. So I think we should all keep that in mind when we go off into our life and lead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're definitely, people are watching us. You know, so many of you have mentioned your parents. I know, Sissy, your mother had a big impact on your life too, as some of the examples that we've heard. And, you know, now thinking about that next generation, our children, Barbara, your daughter influenced what you wore today. You're not getting pinched today, so that's good. You know, but in all sincerity, we are modeling the way in ways we don't even know. And I think we try so hard to do things so right all the time, when who can even say what it is that's gonna impact someone in a way? Like maybe it's our mess that's gonna make somebody else feel courageous and make them that rock star woman like Emily you're discovering, right? So you just never know what's gonna strike someone. It can be very humbling and exciting. How about Patricia?
Well, Joan back.
Joan, would you like to share a book with
I'm
us? We're
sorry, I apologize. Oh, we have a community-wide internet problem, and then I had issues with my phone, but I'm back. Thank you. I'm sorry I
glad you're
missed.
back. We're talking
Thank
about
you,
books.
Joan.
Joan. What book?
Yes, I actually, The Go-Giver, which
Yay.
was recommended by my brokerage, One Sotheby's. And it's a short parable about a young man who's a go-getter, but he's not succeeding. And he ends up speaking to some 5 wise people, different professions, different positions. And basically, it's, as the title implies, go-giver. In our life, we need to focus on giving. And I'm kind of circling back to what we first started talking about, Christine, at the beginning of this seminar.
Yes.
About we should be givers.
Yeah.
We should be generous of ourselves. Success can come from giving. Oh, give. I can't emphasize that enough. And the other thing I would like to talk about is the aspect about net worth. Your net worth is obviously it's your portfolio, but it is the value. What do you give to others? What is your value? And again, inherent in that is this mentality that I did bring from critical care, and I did bring growing up in a house of perfectionists, the pursuit of excellence for the sake of excellence, for the love of excellence. And you do it in every aspect of your lives. And it's this popular phrase, how you do anything is how you do everything. I love that.
Love that.
Like right when we lost you, I was just throwing the ball to you to talk about that quote, and here you are bringing it up. This is perfect.
So yes, excellence.
Yeah, it worked out perfect.
Giving your all, and that's your net worth. How valuable are you to other people?
That's right. Thank you. And we're so glad you were able to pop back on. We were joking about how resilience is an overused word, but I I think this might be one of the appropriate times to use it, right? Like bouncing back. It's about how you get back in when things against your control are taking control of you. Patricia, you probably got a book for us too, yes?
I absolutely do. So Barbara talked about sort of Venn diagrams of relationships, and I think about them on a continuum. February, a very dear friend of mine published a book called Connect. Her name is Carol Robin, and the book speaks to how to build exceptional relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. Carol taught interpersonal dynamics at the Stanford Business School, was a rock star professor that, and she also coached many, many titans in the tech industry who ironically have an inverse relationship between their technical ability and their often interpersonal skills.
That's why I have a job.
I find, yeah, that's why you have a job. So I find this book, I'm going to hold it up, which was very recently published, very useful. And typically I have to say that I'm a reader of novels in multiple languages. It's one of my secret pleasures.
Oh.
So I don't read a lot of business books. But I think that those business books like this one that present cases that you can put yourself into to see how to take relationships up the continuum from and really take an active part in that is a terrific read. So I commend you to it.
Wow, we're really getting a bookshelf worth of summer reading for us. And I hear, Christine, you might have a book too, I see in the chat. So tell us, what's your book?
I'm going to unmute myself. I was busily trying to do Barbara's diagram, which has actually got me thinking on so many different levels. So my book is Your Network. Your network is your net worth, actually. And Porter Gale is an extraordinary woman. She was actually going to try and join this panel when I started working on this, but she just has a new job now. But she's on the board of Reddit. She was the chief marketing officer for Virgin Worldwide. She's an extraordinary speaker. I saw her speak years ago at a HubSpot conference, and I was just enamored by her. And this talks about barriers, how we really need to understand those barriers. And we're all networkers, but we constantly put barriers in front of ourselves on a daily basis. And sometimes we recognize them and sometimes we don't. And she goes through how you can break those down. And so I recommend Your Network is Your Net Worth.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. I appreciate all of you for sharing with us a little peek at your bookshelf, even though Patricia, now I'm curious to hear more about these novels in different languages. So maybe we'll save that for another call, but I'm excited about it. But as we prepare for each one of our panelists to be able to share a closing thought with us, I'm going to share my screen one more time because I wasn't going to share this, but I've been so inspired by the talks that we've been hearing and the stories from our panelists. And everything that I've been hearing has been reminding me of this one kind of cliche slide called the Wheel of Life. Mm-hmm. And so much of what we've heard has been success in career, bravery and reinvention of career, betting the whole farm on our finances, prioritizing our health, refocusing on relationships, building a sense of community, but even our own personal growth, we could have probably touched on more. In leisure, we definitely just barely scratched the surface on that. But, you know, as we think about our own lives, if we had this like in a printout and it was on a piece of paper and that green circle represented like a 0, like totally nothing happening, 0, no, nothing great here. 10 being the other extreme, closer to the word, so the outside edge of those spokes. 10 is like, I am vibing at the highest frequency possible. All things are going a perfect way for me. If we were to rate ourselves in each one of these areas on somewhere on that continuum spoke between 0 and 10, in each areas, you know, think for yourself, where would that be? And I've done this with groups where on Zoom, sometimes we have this tool called the stamp tool turned on. I don't think we have that tool today. If you can see it, try it. But, and what's really fun with the stamp tool is if you do this with a group, you can see where everybody puts their stamps anonymously, right? So it's a really cool visual, but we can use our imaginations today, ladies, right? Some of us might be a 10 in some areas, a 5, a 6, a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, right? Now, here's the really tough thing to accept. If we connected the dots from one spoke to the next spoke to the next spoke, so say you're a 10 in career and a 6 in finance and a 7 in community and a 0 in personal growth because you just haven't done that in a while, or you get the idea, right? We're going to connect those lines. Think to yourself, would your circle be much of a circle, or would it be kind of like a wonky blob? And if that wonky blob were actually like a bicycle tire, how bumpy would your ride be? And what's crazy to think about is, let's say everything is a perfect 8, we can call it, but one area is a 6 or a 7. That's still going to be kind of a bumpy ride. And yet so often at the beginning of the year, we set goals and we say, well, I'm going to put all my energy into my career, all my energy into saving all my money. And that's going to mean I can't go hang out with my friends, or I'm going to put all my energy into this romantic relationship or to my friend relationships, or just focusing on my personal growth. If we put all our energy to any one area and we don't create this sense of growth and abundance in every area of our life, it's going to be a bumpy ride, right? The opposite would be, imagine if we're small in all these areas. I think a lot of people I talk to today with COVID are feeling kind of small. They're feeling disconnected from their career community. Their finances are kind of scary and uncertain. Their health, maybe it's the COVID-10, right? They're a small circle. If you put a small tire on a bicycle, it's going to have to go around a lot of times to go any kind of distance, and that's exhausting, right? So, as we're reflecting on what we've been hearing from the panelists, hopefully you're starting to see how they have lived such an intentional life and continue to do so, and how we can really be inspired to do the same and to show appreciation with TAPE, to use those human relations principles to engage people, to keep being a reader, and ultimately to achieve whatever it is that we define as what we want our life to be, that intentional life, right? So with that, I would love to go around and hear from each of you just a closing thought for our participants, and then we will open up the room for Q&A until we hit the top of the 1 o'clock Eastern hour. So ladies, who'll be first with some closing thoughts?
I will dive in if that's okay.
We'd love it. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that wheel. That I just love visual images, and it's very helpful. And I've never seen that before, so that was very interesting. But what I was immediately drawn to, which would be a 10, would be spirituality. And I have a very active prayer life. I feel like all our gifts, and all the women in this panel are highly gifted. Everybody has their own gifts. They're gifts from God, and God expects us to help others. And that's, again, going back to that giving concept. And I think with that comes gratitude, and gratitude is infectious. That is, you live a life of joy. People are attracted to people with joy and gratitude. And I think it's very important. I think that will affect all the other folks in the wheel. That's how I live my life.
Thank you so much for reinforcing that message and for being with us today. Who'll be next?
I'll go.
Let's do it.
Okay. So I think that in my life, I have, I set goals for myself, and sometimes, many times those goals may be lofty. And if I don't quite meet that goal, I'm more critical of myself than I think anybody else would be. So I remember my first political run, and it was the first time I stepped into politics, knew nothing about politics, but just my neighbors told me I should do it. And I did that, and I ran in a countywide race against an 18-year incumbent, and I lost by 1,500 votes. I was so devastated because I had never lost anything in my life, never. I mean, you can put me in any school, you can put me in any situation, any business situation, and I never lost. And I was so devastated because I felt like that was just like the worst form of rejection I could ever have. And I just remembered just being so hard on myself for not accomplishing that goal the first time around. And I know that in the scope of doing our jobs and being professionals and being entrepreneurs, sometimes when we just don't make that goal just right, we can be so hard on ourselves. And so I always say to people, just set reasonable goals. If you make it, that's great. That's just one more thing to propel you forward. But just remember to take it easy on yourself, because sometimes we can be our worst critics and other people around us are looking at us and saying, hey, you're doing a great job. So just remember to take it easy on yourself and set reasonable goals.
Thank you. That's encouraging. We need to hear that. All of us are achievers. We want to win. So thank you. Patricia.
So perfect segue to what Barbara was saying, but as I looked at that circle, I looked at where I'm the lumpiest. It would probably be, particularly this year, but throughout my life, leisure. Many of us who are propelled to be leaders, and particularly women leaders, a little bit maybe before our times, feel as though we have to be 24/7 is there and available. And as a result, we don't do the one thing that I think through therapy and meaningful relationships I've learned, but I don't always practice well enough, which is be good to yourself. And I think that it's a principle that is so simple, but we so easily outlook it. We can get on this screen at 7 o'clock in the morning. We can run and do this. We can be there for everyone. And then there's very little left. And eventually those diminishing returns can really take over and harm every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
So I would say leisure, which can be whatever your secret pleasures are. Indulge in them, whether it's the novels or pedicure or a hike or practicing mindfulness. It's really important, and as important as many other things on that circle. But I'm not the perfect example.
Why it takes an incredible person to be willing to talk about the things that we don't feel we've mastered yet. And in my opinion, we all are works in progress in all these areas. I know I personally teach this stuff and I still struggle with it. Try teaching a disagree agreeably class or a stress management class, and you'll realize you're learning every time you teach it. So I'm with you, Patricia. And there's a reason that the airlines literally have to remind us to put on our mask before we put on anyone else's, and we all kind of roll our eyes like that's the silliest piece of advice ever. But there's a reason that they tell us, because humanity, many of us don't think about recharging our own batteries and being good to ourselves. Thank you for that. Emily, I see you. What's a final thought from you?
Yeah. So final thought is I took a look at that wheel. It really does model Miami Women Who Rock and what we feel is important in women. And, you know, we have 4 cornerstones, which is spiritually, financially, physically, and emotionally. And our tagline is rock your health, rock the world. And it all starts with the physical health, and talk about coming full circle for me, because it's definitely one that, you know, when we have our health, we have everything. But, you know, the other part of that is when we have faith, everything is possible. So that's where I would leave it. And what I love that whole circle. Thank you for sharing that with us, Christine. It gave me a lot to think about.
My pleasure. Thank you, Emily. And Sissy, what
Yeah,
are some
I thought next to last, relationships. So I saw the relationship circle, and it reminded me of a message I wanted to leave with everybody in terms of networking. Had I not started my global network of PR firms around the world, I would not have been in Shanghai, and I wouldn't have met my husband. So networking, for all you single women out there, can also lead to romance.
I'm booking the next flight.
I can't think of a better word to leave this on than that, right?
There you go. What area we didn't cover? Love.
We all squirm in our seats when you start talking about love. It's pretty cute. Or maybe we're just at that 90-minute mark where most humans can't sit any longer. But I'm going to choose to think that we're all kind of wiggly about love. So thank you.
Imagine that bombshell when he saw her on that plane. He was done.
Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us, and thank you to all of our participants for being here as well. We've got 5 minutes until the top of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A. Probably the best way to do this is if you've got a question, put it in the chat, and then if you're comfortable coming off mute, we'll just ask you to come off mute and talk about it more, or we might be able to just answer your question from the chat. So let's give people a second here to see if they've got some questions. We'll give them about 20 seconds here, and if not,
I have one, so I'll ask one when everybody else is.
yeah, you got it. We'll just give them a chance here. See. All right, Christine, why don't you lead us off with the question that's on your mind, and is it to a specific person or is it open to the panel?
No, I think it's open to the panel, and I think each and every one will have a different answer. One of the things that I'm not very good at when it comes to myself is I tend to write everything and I do in an agenda, and I tend to have a million Post-its and things like that. But how do you, when you do the work, right? We've talked about all these different examples and techniques about growing your network. How do you track your progress? Do you have something that measures besides the return on investment, but personally, how do you have a tracking method for growing that network? And maybe the answer is the groups, I don't know, but what is your tracking method?
Well, for me, I take business cards constantly, and I meet people constantly. And what I do is I take those business cards and I put them in a database. And then I try to keep in contact with those persons by emailing, by reaching out. And what I found is, for example, I bought a new building and I wanted to get some inside work done. And I needed a painter because my painter that was working on my building got COVID. And that little network of cards and came in handy because I put the word painter in, and boom, somebody popped up in my area in the same city. And it's somebody I met like 6 years ago. And I ended up utilizing that person to finish off the inside of my building and get in. And I think that that's how you kind of keep track of, okay, is this expanding, and am I meeting the right people, and am I meeting people that I can add value to and that they can add value to me too? And that was part of what I was saying when it's kind of a reciprocal relationship. I was so grateful to just put the word painter in and have a painter come up. So that's kind of how I measure whether or not I'm expanding my network and whether or not it has value.
I wanted to add to that because, we're 4,000 strong. So one of the things that I do is, try to get feedback. And I see that Anna Milton is on here, so I'm going to put her on blast. But is I really, ask for feedback. And sometimes, I really get it. So there's certain things I do that I could do better. And I'm so happy that my founder circle really keeps me honest and keeps me on track. And I'm a touchy-feely person. So that's typically my go-to is like, how am I do, but this year I've leaned into technology. And what I'm looking at is, we all know Constant Contact, but, I started looking at engagement and started looking at metrics. Who's really opening up those big, long emails. And so, and there was a whole lot of insights that I got when I started to do that. So, those are kind of just two that I've leaned into this year.
We've got another question from the chat, so I'll go ahead and share that. It's from Michelle, and Michelle says, how do you manage feeling overwhelmed while simultaneously feeling like you're not doing enough? Ugh, this is a real reality we all face, I think, Michelle. Thank you for bringing this up. So that balance between not doing enough and overwhelmed, how do we deal with this? Who's got that one?
I'll jump in. I think it's just taking a step back at all times. Kind of don't sweat the small stuff and put everything in perspective. I think we have to kind of relax our inner selves And I think we're racing all the time. And I think you have to take multiple moments a day. For me, it's a prayer life. Maybe it's meditation. Find that place where you can calm down, slow down your mind, not just your body. And I think that helps a lot of putting things in perspective and not feeling overwhelmed, because we are how we respond to things. Nothing can change us or affect us if we don't allow it to. So we have to kind of realize we have control of how we can respond to people and things around us. And we have a lot more power than we realize, as well as resiliency, as you've mentioned, Christine.
I can't think of a better way to end our session than on that question. I wish we had time to hear from all of our panelists, because man, that's a heavy lift for all of us. But hopefully this has been a time, 90 minutes, that's an encouragement to everyone. I know it has been for me, and I see from the body language of our panelists, I'm assuming for you guys too. So it's just great to have this sense of community together. And I'm going to close out our portion with a quote from our founder that resonated with me when I started with Dale Carnegie 13 years ago, but means more to me now than ever. So Dale Carnegie said, "You've got to keep your mind open to change all the time. You've got to welcome it. You've got to court it. And it's only by examining and then re-examining our options that we can progress." The pandemic has launched us into accelerated future. We have progressed. Let's try to keep our minds open and welcome it in that way. Thank you, ladies, for joining us on this panel today. And we're so glad that you came. Christine?
Thank you, Christine.
Yes.
Thank
And
you,
I want to
Christine.
thank also on behalf of the Women in Wealth Seminar Series and Coral Gables Trust and everybody here, you all hopped on this journey with me. And we've got so many more ideas, and I know that we will be back. We offer these, we're going to have our up and coming Women in Wealth Seminar Series now in Q2. And trust me, these ladies will be back, as many of you will witness. We love everybody. God bless. And Christine, you are a rock star. What a great panel. What a great moderation.
Yeah.
And Barbara, I was not able
concur.
to complete the little
concur.
circle because I was listening and I was trying. But what I would like to do is send it over. Barbara gave me some great notes. And on that note, God bless. Un
Thank you.
beso.
God bless.
Hasta pronto.
Besos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone,
Bye,
for joining
guys.
us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.